Chapter 22, Part 2, Screencast 1. Now, this series of screencasts will be focusing on adaptive immunity, and remember, this also may be called specific immunity. So as we can see here, we basically have two branches. We have cell-mediated immunity, and this is actually going to be mediated by T lymphocytes. And remember, these lymphocytes are effective against antigens within cells. And another important thing to remember here that we'll see a little bit later is they require antigen-presenting cells. Once they are stimulated, they will form either cytotoxic lymphocytes or helper lymphocytes. What I do want to point out here is notice what we see happening as far as interleukins and these cytokines. What they really are doing are linking all aspects of adaptive immunity. Now, the effector response of T lymphocytes is to destroy cells through apoptosis, and that will be accomplished via the cytotoxic T cells. Humoral immunity, on the other hand, is mediated by B lymphocytes, and this type of immunity is effective against antigens outside cells and does not require antigen-presenting cells. Once activated, we actually will get plasma cells, and then these plasma cells will actually produce antibodies. One thing that's very characteristic of adaptive immunity is the fact that it has memory. Now, pathogens are detected by lymphocytes because they contain antigens. Antigens are defined as any substance that binds to a T lymphocyte or an antibody. Antigens typically are a protein or large polysaccharide, and some examples of antigens would be the protein capsid of viruses, bacterial toxins, the cell wall of bacteria or fungi, or abnormal proteins or tumor antigens. Now, foreign antigens versus self-antigens. Foreign antigens differ from human body's molecules, and they're going to bind body's immune components. Self-antigens are body's own molecules, and they are not going to bind immune components. Generally, the immune system is able to distinguish between self-antigen and foreign antigen. However, there are autoimmune disorders when the system will actually react to a self-antigen as if it is a foreign invader. Immunogen. This is an antigen that induces an immune response, and we also have this new term called immunogenicity, and this is the ability to trigger an immune response. Now, this will increase with an antigen's degree of foreignness, size, complexity, or quantity. Now, haptens, these are too small to function as an antigen alone, and they will become immunogenic when attached to a molecule within the body. And so examples would be the toxin found in poison ivy. This also is what accounts for hypersensitivity reactions. So those of you that have allergies, this is one of the underlying causes of them. And remember, allergies really are an immune response. Now, there are a number of disorders that we refer to as autoimmune disorders, and they are basically when the immune system is able to tolerate self-antigen. And what this does, this initiates an immune response as if the cell, which does belong, were foreign. This could be due to cross-reactivity, altered self-antigens, or entering areas of immune privilege. If we look at some examples of autoimmune disorders, we can look at type 1 diabetes, multiple sclerosis, rheumatic heart disease, rheumatoid arthritis, and there are quite a few out there. Now, here we're going to be looking at the general structure of lymphocytes. So remember, we're going to differentiate between B cells and T cells. And one thing to remember is both of these lymphocytes have unique receptor complexes, about 100,000 per cell, and each complex binds one specific antigen. When we talk about the TCR, that is the T cell receptor, and it is the antigen receptor of T lymphocyte, whereas BCR, B cell receptor, is antigen receptor of B lymphocytes. Now, the lymphocyte will come into contact with an antigen, and B lymphocytes make direct contact with the antigen, whereas T lymphocytes have antigen presented by another cell. Now, we're going to have two general types of lymphocytes as we've addressed previously. I am not going to hold you responsible for differentiating between CD4 or CD8, but that does refer to a protein that's associated with these lymphocytes. Helper T cells assist in cell-mediated humoral and innate immunity, and what they eventually do will activate natural killer cells and macrophages. Cytotoxic T lymphocytes are CD8 plus cells, and they actually are responsible for the release of chemicals that destroy other cells. Other types of lymphocytes or T cells include memory T cells and regulatory T cells.